You're listening to Simon Scriver's amazingly ultimate fundraising superstar podcast, talking all things fundraising, charities, nonprofits, and more. Here's your host, as always, Simon Scriver.
Hello and welcome again to my podcast. This is Simon here, and I'm joined again. If you listened to a previous podcast, you would have heard these two wonderful creatures. We have Sinead O'Keefe and John Dwyer joining us again to talk about something in particular. Hello, John. How are you?
I'm good, thanks, Simon. How's it going?
Yeah, I'm pretty good. Long time no speak. And hello, Sinead. How are you? Everything all right down in Cork?
Everything's great, Simon.
Good. I imagine it's wonderful and sunny in Cork. So John and Sinead are amazing fundraisers, as I'm sure you heard them introduce themselves in a previous podcast. John works as a fundraising consultant and does all sorts of everything. And he's doing a bit of work with Enable Ireland now, who coincidentally, that is who Sinead works for. Sinead works for an Irish charity called Enable Ireland, but they both have a wealth of experience in all areas of fundraising. And what I wanted to talk to you guys today about, if I may, is about this idea of going into organizations and trying to get their board or their CEO to invest in something new, I suppose, and I think a lot of people who listen to this podcast are maybe experienced fundraisers, people who go to fundraising conferences and hear these great ideas and innovations and forward thinking, but then they go back into their organization and they're hit with a wall and a roadblock of an organization that doesn't understand fundraising, doesn't want to try new, doesn't want to invest in something. Does that sound familiar? Sinead, maybe I'll start with you. Does that sound like something you've heard before? Organizations not willing to invest in this kind of thing?
Absolutely. It has happened to me on numerous occasions that I have come into a room or a meeting or directly to my boss or whatever the case may be with what I think is a fabulous idea. And you're greeted with an emphatic no, or stone face, or don't get get what you're talking about, or they have no budget, there's never a budget, etc., etc. So with certain challenge, probably more so than a lot of others.
Yeah, it's frustrating. I suppose it's part of the reason fundraisers get so demotivated, because sometimes it feels like you're against your own organization.
Yes, I think so. I think, the successful fundraisers, or the ones that stay at it, are the ones who learn how to get across certain barriers. Or, a flaw I would have had previously is that I would jump straight in with my idea, where realistically, I think, know your audience. So have a plan made out, look at the questions that you think you're going to be asked when you present your idea, and or have the answers ready, and in fact possibly present those answers without being asked. That way, you have the whole plan laid out. Don't spend too much time on it now in case it's not going to come to fruition. But definitely map out your idea and how you see it working, and who's going to do the work, who's going to be the donor, and what is the budget, if any, before you go in. That's what I would say.
So it's all about or a lot about preparation and understanding that the people you're talking to aren't fundraisers and are in a very different boat from you.
Yeah, a lot of the time they're not, and sometimes they are fundraisers, but a lot of the time they're not. And even if they are fundraisers, you'll know yourself what type of fundraiser they are. And I think a lot of people, it's a fear factor. It's a fear of failure, or it's a fear of being different, or it's we tried that 5 years ago and it didn't work. Well, guess what? I've changed it since then, or times have changed since then, etc., etc.
Yeah, we're a risk-averse sector for a number of reasons, but we're very risk-averse. John, you work with a lot of small, medium, large organizations. You're going in as the outsider, I suppose, a lot of the time, and trying to get people on board with stuff. You get resistance? You've been faced with that?
Yeah, definitely. I think just as you were talking there, I think people's experience is a big factor on how they receive the information that you're giving them. So I think it's definitely worth considering. Well, as Sinead said, maybe what type of fundraiser they are. So if their background is in a certain type of fundraising, so community events, they're going to bring that to bear on the information that you're giving. So it's worth thinking about that when you're actually trying to get something across the line. So the other thoughts I would have is it depends on what level you're trying to influence change. I suppose the more significant it is on the organization, the more resistance you're probably going to face as well. So if it's a fundamental change or a new revenue stream that's going to maybe shake up the way a department or an organization is structured, you're going to have to go right to the board. And then when you hit the board level, it depends on the experience that the board have had, maybe about previous fundraising activity, how many fundraisers are on that board. And the type of things that I've definitely found useful in getting new ideas across the line are benchmarking. I think is really useful both within our own sector, what other successful organizations have done, but also making comparisons with the commercial sector as well, especially at a board level where a lot of the expertise might come from the commercial sector, and sometimes they're revered the commercial sector as knowing how to do things, which I think, as we all know, it's a different. They do, but it's a different ball game as well. So
sometimes they do. I don't think they have a better success rate than us, but they're certainly perceived as having a better success, aren't they?
Absolutely.
You might have to boost the ego of the person that you're pitching to as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You got to suck up to them. And yeah, I mean, it's that knowing that audience thing, isn't it? Knowing what they're going to respond to and knowing what they're going to warm to. I think that's really interesting what you're saying, John, about benchmarking, because I've used that on like the macro level where you're showing the statistics and the real case studies of doing it. But another thing that can work sometimes is actually bringing someone in to your board who's gone through it and just getting that outside voice in to like confirm what you're saying.
Absolutely. There's nothing better to get so-called experts from the external side of things in to iterate your thing internally. That definitely works.
Did you ever have that piece of work, John, where you have to go in and tell a board, you basically just have to tell them what the fundraiser's already told them, and essentially you're just being asked to like confirm, to give a second opinion?
Yeah, a lot of the time it often is that. It's just that external validation. That the person that's working internally isn't given the same weight as somebody externally who's worked with lots of organizations. And I suppose that is the value sometimes of an external consultant that has worked with lots of different organizations, where they can reference lots of campaigns that they have worked with other people, and they can bring that into the room.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you guys got much experience of like meeting with boards and presenting to boards for approval?
I've done 2 different organizations.
Yeah, and are they? I mean, what's the vibe in there? Like, are they? I mean, they're not. You don't usually have a fundraiser on the board, do you? You have people who don't.
No, actually, I've done it 3 times. Done 3 times actually.
Has there ever been a fundraiser on the board?
On the board.
I mean, you're usually pick, or you're usually like trying to get it across to people who don't understand or even don't like fundraising.
Yeah, or they think they're fundraisers because they've been on the committee.
Yes, actually, and that's the wonderful thing about profession is everyone thinks they know how to do it better than you.
Yeah. So I think you have to be respectful and take on board what they're saying. And then move on with your presentation.
John, you're not as polite as Sinead. Do you have to respect what they're saying?
Could you say that again? Sorry, I didn't catch it.
You don't have to respect what a board is saying, do you? Or do you have to kind of take it on and be nice and try and find middle ground?
I think something that's worked quite well for me is if you have an ally on the board, or if there's a subcommittee who can You can talk through your proposal with, and maybe pick out the holes before you actually present it to the whole board. Because if you have an ally who understands fundraising and can take your proposal or sponsor it and take it to the board and say that they're backing you, I think that can go a long way. And they also probably know the makeup of your board well, so they'll actually be able to tell you, well, I think you're going to get this type of argument from this person, so you need to have this prepared in advance. And that can help you be more successful, I think, when getting the proposals through a board, actually.
Yeah, that's genius. And I would add to that it's easier to get one person on side than it is to get a group of people on side, you know. So it's like if you can meet with them one-on-one, I've always found that to be much more effective. Ask them for advice.
Yeah, ask them to meet them in advance for advice. Yeah. Definitely that works. Ask them if you can run through some of the ideas you have for the board meeting with them in advance as well. That works too.
They're just human beings.
They're just human beings. I think one of the challenges also that I've had is, you know, you'd often have 3 or 4 completely different type personalities on the board, and that can be challenging. So for instance, you might have an analyst type who wants a 1-page document, spreadsheet format, numbers. That's it. They don't care about the baby steps that got you to a figure, for instance. And then you might have a marketeer or somebody that wants all the details. So you kind of have to juggle your presentation based on your audience, and definitely don't go in blind. Know who's in the room.
That's good shit.
And you'd actually, when you were talking about are there fundraisers on boards, in Ireland, I don't think there are many fundraisers on boards, but I think boards are crying out or should be trying to have fundraisers on the boards as much as possible. But obviously with a skills shortage, that makes it harder to have that level of senior expertise on the board as well. But it is invaluable, I think, to organizations that are really trying to have significant growth to actually have a fundraiser on the board to guide the fundraisers and stick up for them within the organization.
Yeah,
Definitely.
absolutely.
Or even the mentors in the sector. There's very few people mentoring other fundraisers because they're fear of competition and things like that.
Which is a shame. I think it's really good if you're a fundraiser to sit on a board of like a smaller or more inexperienced organization, because it gives you a point of view of the board member. You begin to see it a bit through the eyes of a board member. So when you're going back to your own board, you kind of can see this other side of it. Because you know, I give board members a hard time, but actually there's a lot more to it, and there's a lot of work for very little or no reward. And so that helps us to understand our target audience, which is these board members we're pitching to. Is that an agreeing silence?
Yes, it is.
Of course, Simon.
Yes, fantastic.
Sorry, switched off.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, well,
I think it's good to be honest as well and upfront if you're bringing proposals to the board. You know, lay everything out on the table within a certain, bring the risks but show how you're going to mitigate them. Because if you bring a perfect thing, that things can go wrong and it's all going to be perfect. This has always worked. It's not believable, but if you show the potential pitfalls and how you're going to navigate them, I think you'll probably be more successful in getting people on board.
Yeah, it becomes more realistic.
Definitely, and I think the other thing is, you know, depending on what you're presenting, I always want to know where the money. So if the money's not going to come in for 18 months or 2 years or 2 weeks, you know, you need buy-in on that as well, and that's where your advisor will come in. That's where your ally will come in a lot of the time, because the fundraising sector in Ireland is changing, and boards need to get on board with that.
Nice.
Pardon the pun.
I like it.
I'm done. Exactly.
Okay. Okay, I'm conscious of taking up too much of your time because I know you both have kiddies to get to. Is there anything else you want to add on this that fundraisers must absolutely know when pitching to their board, when trying to get their organization on board with something?
I think you've got to judge the level of experience with your board as well. Some boards will be quite experienced in terms of fundraising. So you've got to judge where they're at, where they're at, and what's appropriate to take to them. Do you need to create some small wins before you actually hit them with a big, and get an ally and get them, if you're going in, rather than going in cold. Can you engage them before you actually bring maybe a very big proposal to them?
Yeah, it's a very different conversation. If you're talking to a board that has never fundraised before or never had to invest in fundraising before, versus a board who, you're trying to get them to invest in door to door, doing those things. Like that's a very different conversation.
Definitely, and I think they're just people. They're just people. So you don't need to be overly fearful of them. And also, I do think trial your presentation on somebody else outside of the organization if you're very nervous. If you trust another fundraiser, do it with another fundraiser. Otherwise, do it with somebody that you think is going to give you honest feedback, and do it in advance. Because if you're very nervous, or if you're not quite sure how you're going to be received, then you're probably not going to do the best job that you would have done otherwise. I would say.
That's fair. Yeah, I think that's good advice for all forms of fundraising. When in doubt, speak to another fundraiser. Get the second advice. All right, let's start to wrap it up. I've got one more question. John and Sinead, you know each other quite well. If you were to form a band, what would the name of your band be? Any ideas?
The Dwyer.
Maybe Winston the Duck.
Winston the Duck. That's a good name.
Yeah.
Okay, that's okay. All right. So very smart, helpful fundraisers. If people want to find you and know more about you, where's the best place to find you, John?
You can find me on LinkedIn under John Dwyer. That's probably the best place to look me up right now.
Cool. John Dwyer on LinkedIn, based out of Dublin, but you work all over, and you are a wealth of information and one of the best consultants out there. Sinead, if people want to find out more from you, you don't really like hearing from people, but where would they find you?
All potential donors can find me at LinkedIn as well, or OK_Sinead on Twitter.
Sorry, you cut out the. So on Twitter, you're OK_Sinead.
Yes, OK_Sinead on Twitter, and on LinkedIn at Sinead O'Keefe, or in Cork, all over Ireland as well. And would be very happy to hear from people.
Brilliant. Yeah. Thanks so much for your time, guys. It was so lovely to chat to you again. And I hope I get to see you again soon. But thanks for sharing all your wisdom. And I hope you have a lovely rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us, Simon.
Goodbye, Sinead. Goodbye, John.
Bye, Simon.
And now a word from our sponsors.
So we're coming to Vegas to talk about donor love, all things donor love, the principles. We're going to share a whole bunch of practical examples.
Two-day masterclass. We got lots of stuff we can cover. We're happy to cover things you want. Ask questions in advance. We'll be in touch with you beforehand, so it can be kind of customized to what you guys want and need. Unique to Vegas.
Yeah, a nice open space for everyone, so that we can deal with your actual issues that you're going through and share lots of information and stuff like that.
It's going to be awesome. We'll be there January 16th?
18th to 19th.
18th and 19th.
In the Golden Nugget in Las Vegas.
And you should go to afblasvegas.org.
afblasvegas.org. And our website is donorloveacademy.com, and the details of that event and any other event coming up will be on there.
See you Vegas.
See you Vegas.
Vegas.
Had 4 very exciting people running it, and each had a different style, a different perspective, and the material was great. It's something that I really believe in, but they gave me a lot of new ideas and a lot of new things that I can take back home with me. And as happens in these master classes, sometimes you get an idea that's not necessarily directly related to what has been said, but it's a great idea to take back anyway. So I am grateful to the presenters because they were really entertaining, they were wonderful, all in different styles, as I said, but really great. And I would be happy to take a masterclass from them again.
You've been listening to Simon Scriver's Amazingly Ultimate Fundraising Superstar podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and head over to changefundraising.com to learn more or get in touch with Simon. Or don't, whatever.